Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for being here, and welcome to our Artist Career Success Interview Series. I am so proud, honored, and excited to have the one, the only Patrick McAndrew. Welcome to our show, Patrick.
Oh, I'm so glad to be here. I was so excited when you invited me to come on the show. I think it's great that you're doing these artist interviews, and honored to be part.
Well, thank you so much. And everybody, Patrick and I go way back, I believe, so at least 9, 10 years, and not more than that.
Yeah, probably about 10 years now.
Wow.
Or over 10 years, I think. Yeah.
Wow, time is flying, right?
It's crazy. It's insane. Time flies when you're having fun, you know?
Yes. Yeah, so we met in undergrad, and instantly I just knew like Patrick was going to be one of those people to go really far, and he's done everything from theater to music and now entrepreneurship, and he's just really, really inspiring, really positive, and one of those artists that you really need to hear from. So that was why I invited him here today. Again, I'm really happy that you're a part of this.
Hey, I'm excited to dive into a conversation, and it's great. Why I love that you're doing this, Roger, is that it's a great opportunity for artists to talk and have a conversation, and for other artists to tune in as well. I think, as we were talking about just before we started recording, that now with the pandemic, it's such an uncertain time for artists. And so any opportunity where we can come together and collaborate or even just have a conversation, I think is something that's very valuable.
Absolutely. I love it. So let's jump right in. Tell folks who you are, what you do, and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Patrick McAndrew, and I am an actor and podcaster based in New York City. And I guess I originally got into the acting space actually when I was at Ursinus College with Roger. I had gone into undergrad, actually not planning to study theater, but my first semester, freshman year, there was just something inside me that was like, oh, I think that I would enjoy acting. I would enjoy being in a production. And because I never done it in high school. In high school, I was primarily focused more on music because I'm also a musician. And so I ended up getting cast. I didn't have any lines or anything like that in the show. I was an ensemble member that in addition to pretending to be like a homeless merchant of sorts, I also helped move things on the set and everything. It was a very, very minimal role. But I remember being backstage the opening night and just looking around at like the excitement happening on that we're about to put on this performance. And I just thought it was the coolest thing in the world. It was like something that I had never experienced. And so I ended up doing a production, and sometimes more than one production a semester at my time, and ended up majoring in theater. Absolutely loved it. Learned so much about this art form that was so new to me, but then also learned so much about myself in the process as an artist. I graduated from Ursinus, and like many people in their early 20s, wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do. I know that I had studied theater, but as with any arts field, it's always kind of a difficult field to break into. I ended up working full-time in admissions at Ursinus and did acting on the side. And it was actually a really good job. I enjoyed it. I had always told people that it was the best job I could have that I didn't want to have. Yes. Because I knew while I was doing it that it wasn't what I was meant to be doing, but I worked with great people. I was in this environment that I loved and got to do some cool things in that position, and also learn. I think it was good for me to kind of work for a couple of years after I had graduated. But then eventually I decided, especially after doing some acting and theater on the side, that this was something I really wanted to be serious about. So I went to graduate school at Villanova University, also in the Philadelphia area. They have a Master's of Theater program there. Loved it. Absolutely amazing program. Anyone who's tuning in, who's thinking about getting a Master's of Theater, I highly recommend Villanova University's program. Just because there's so many components to it. You learn so much about yourself as an artist, as a person. And I felt like it made so much sense for me at the time, because at that point in my career, I just wanted to be involved in theater in any capacity, not just acting, but also working behind the scenes, doing playwriting, and Villanova was perfect. After graduating from Villanova, I then moved up to New York City, which is where I've been for I guess a little over 3 years now, and it's been great. I've worked in a variety of different facets of theater. I've worked as a technician off Broadway. I've been a theater administrator as well, something that I do for a theater festival up here. And then my primary focus has been as an actor. So I've had the opportunity to work both off Broadway and off Broadway in a variety of productions. And I most recently have started doing films as well, primarily short and independent films. And I was starting to get some momentum with that once the pandemic hit. So obviously, since that's happened, things have kind of slowed down a bit. But it's been exciting. When I first moved to New York, I guess, I don't know if I was afraid or a little intimidated. You hear a lot of people say that how New York is this very big and scary place, especially if you're pursuing the arts. But then once I was up here, and started meeting people in the artistic community, I absolutely loved it. And, I don't know if I'll be in New York forever, but I'm definitely enjoying it while I'm here. And so yeah, it's been a fun journey. And, now just talking to you about it, it's interesting kind of reflecting back on, where I have been and how far I've come through those years as well.
Wow. So inspiring to me because, like you said, you started out as a musician primarily, and then you kind of transitioned into acting. But yet, you still held down a job, right? That really sticks out to me. It's something I preach to a lot of artists. You have to do what you have to do to get to where you want to go. And I love that you weren't afraid to do that. But while you were working, you also said, I'm going to continue to act, right? So all of our artists who are listening out there, you should realize that you don't have to stop. You might just have to work a little bit harder, more strategically. You might be balancing 2 careers simultaneously, but don't give up your artistry while you make money, because you need money to fuel your artistry and to keep it.
Yeah, and that's why I love so much about what you do, Roger, is that I think sometimes some artists think that it's very romantic to lean into this like starving artist mentality, but it's not sustainable. Like it's not like, it could be romanticized in like films and things like that, but it's definitely not a sustainable way to live. And I think that the best artists are those who are able to find balance within their lives, both in their artistic career, in their personal life with family and friends, but then also their financial aspect as well. I think that if, being on top of your finances is something that's so important as an artist, because if you're on top of those finances, if you're on top of the business end of your art, then you are then able to focus more so on the creative aspects, as opposed to always being in this mindset of, okay, I'm struggling. I think it's really important for artists to have that sort of business and financial mindset, and to really value the importance of that.
Wow, that's the word. I love it. I got a lot out of that. It's not romantic to me. I never like the starving artist, and I say that I never like the mentality of it. I don't like hearing it, because it shouldn't be a thing, right? We don't have starving doctors and starving lawyers, so I don't know why people feel like they have to starve to produce art, when you and I and everybody else knows that art is expensive to produce and to sustain. Right. You need money to do it. It's not evil. It's about what you do with the money. And, when you're talking about budgeting, it's so pertinent right now, because I just did a class on it last night for an artist I'm teaching at UArts. And we had a whole entire night to just develop personal budgets and potential budgets for their businesses and their careers. And you could just see the light bulb go off even on Zoom, Nobody has sat them down and said, money actually matters. And this is how you generate a profit for yourself. Nobody did it for me. So
well, and I think this is something that is lacking a lot in a variety of different programs, arts programs, whether it be acting or dance or music. We have these so many amazing programs across the country that teach you the craft of acting, or musicianship, or variety of dance techniques, singing, so many different things. But I don't think there's enough emphasis on the business side of things, because if you're a student taking these classes and wanting to study how to be a professional dancer, how to be a professional actor, that you are also making an active decision on your lifestyle as well. What kind of
Yes.
life you're deciding to choose based on this career path that you're going. And I think that we need to do a better job of equipping artists, the business side of their careers, the marketing side of their careers. This is something that, in all honesty, I've only really have started thinking about over the past couple of years,
Mm-hmm.
with regards to like how important this is, and why I'm such a big fan of your work, Roger, because, you know, as I was saying before, it's important for artists to be thinking almost as if they're their own CEO and they are the company that they're in charge of. Their body is their instrument,
Yes.
and that, like, that they are the service or the product that they're selling. And I think having that sort of mentality is so helpful for artists and for the people that they're pitching themselves to, so to speak.
Wow. I couldn't agree more. So I hope you guys are listening. We agree, and we hope you do. It's about realizing that you are your brand, you are a business, and you are the service or product that people are investing into. So like Patrick said, it really matters a lot. What's happening financially, branding wise, promotional wise, it all has to come together in a real cohesive package.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. It's so important. So important.
Well, I love it. And you've understood that, for a long time. So I really admire that about you as well. And speaking of a long time, because you have been at this for a while now, what's one moment that was just so memorable in your career, that moment that you feel like I made it, or you had that big epiphany?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I think to go back to like the first production that I did, that was definitely a moment, because I remember that being such like a visceral experience. And I feel like I actually haven't told too many people about it, but it really was this powerful experience of being like, okay, I feel this way about this. Like, there's nothing else I feel this way about. And I think that, like, that was a very eye-opening moment. Um, I think that another moment was when I was moving up to New York, and I had created a one-man show called Real at Villanova that served as my thesis. It was all about the impact that excessive technology use could have on human relationships, which is like, I wrote it 3 years ago, but now it's like very
Yeah.
relevant with how much time we're spending online now.
Yes.
And I had submitted it to this festival, United Solar Theater Festival, and I submitted it not expecting to get accepted, and I did. And it was very exciting because at the time I was unsure about how I felt moving to New York. I was moving to New York because my significant other lived up here, but then also because of the career opportunities. And I got accepted, and it was a really this opportunity of being like, oh, okay, I'm going to be fine. I'm going to be all right moving to this city. And it was a great experience. It's such a great community of people, both solo performers, and within solo performance, there's a variety of different artists who are within that. There's actors, there's dancers, singers, musicians, who all construct their own one-person show and then perform it in this festival. So I think that really gave me this opportunity to be like, okay, I am a valuable artist, to really see myself that okay, I have something that is valuable to this artistic world. That yes, there's thousands of artists who are trying to find work in the city, but also understanding that I'm not competing with them necessarily. I'm more so competing with myself, making sure that
Yes.
making sure that each day that comes, I'm working towards my craft, working, to be better than I was the day before, and then trusting that in time that's going to help me create a sustainable career.
Wow. I love that. You're not competing with yourself. Well, you are competing with yourself, right? Nobody else around you. Just being
Yeah.
or yesterday kind of
Well,
thing.
well, and I think sometimes too, like in the arts, and I think I would agree, like, that you've done this as well with creating your own company. I think that in the arts, sometimes it's very easy for people to pin themselves up against somebody else, that's like, oh, okay, it's this fierce competition, it's so competitive. And like, if you look at it from that perspective, like, yes, in some ways, like, it is competitive, but I think sometimes people try to think of it that way because they're afraid of competing against themselves. Like, that they're afraid to admit that they're not working hard enough to make their goals and dreams come true. I think that in the arts, we're all our own individuals. And even if I'm, so example, being in the acting world, I go out on auditions a lot. And of course, there's other people who are on those auditions with me who may be a similar type as me, and we're both auditioning for the same character. I don't really see it as like, okay, I'm competing with this actor to get this role. And why I don't see it that way is because the person who is the director or the casting director who's holding the audition, they are going to have their opinion, and that's going to be completely different from another director or another casting director. So, and it's all about fulfilling the vision of that director. So the director might have this specific vision, and I could come in and give a really great audition, but I might just not be the best fit for this production. Whereas then the next actor who comes in, they could give a great audition, and then, okay, they're, for whatever reason, they're the person who fits this role. I don't think it's necessarily a better or worse when it comes to competing against others. What I think matters is that you're doing as the best that you can as an individual, that you are going into an audition, whatever it may be, and you know that you have done your best work. Because I think that if we all really reflect, we know when there are times that we do our best, and then there's times where we kind of slack off a little bit. And so I think that's what it's more about, is really looking inward and saying, like, okay, as I mentioned before, how am I doing better than I was yesterday? How am I keeping up on my art form? As opposed to looking outward and kind of judging yourself against other people. And I understand too, like, that's very difficult, especially in the age that we're living in, social media, where it seems like everyone's lives are amazing, and it can be very easy to fall into those patterns of comparing ourselves. But if we're able to distance ourselves from that and really just focus on what we want to achieve for ourselves, I think that's when a lot of things could change.
I couldn't agree more. I think, back in the day, we used to only worry if somebody had stronger technique than us. Right? Then it became about, oh, do they have a look that's a little more marketable? Then it became about, do I have the numbers that this person has on social media? And, if you're comparing about these external factors that you can't control, then you'll never be satisfied. So I love how you mentioned this about the inward and finding the best fit. And a lot of times, people that get cast, you and I know this all too well. It's not always the person with the most degreeage or the person with the most technique. It could be something totally unrelated. Maybe you made the director smile, right? Maybe they feel like you're just going to get along with the group better.
Exactly.
To do about the art, so you can't beat yourself up and feel like a terrible artist because I didn't get picked. You have no idea what the other people are bringing to the table, and you really have no idea what the hiring decision makers were thinking about. So I try not to take it personal. I just say it wasn't for me and move on.
Yeah, exactly. And you could give like the best audition in the world and not get the part or not get the role, whatever it may be. And while, yes, from your perspective, it may look like, oh, I failed, like I didn't achieve this. On the other side of the table, those people who saw your audition would be like, oh my gosh, he or she, they did an amazing job. Like, he was incredible. Like, okay, he's not right for this role, but we're going to bring him in the future for another production or another project that we're working on. And so if you look at it from that perspective, it really changes how you approach your career and how you approach the work that you're doing, because it is all too easy to fall into really that negative space. And it's important to really take action. And that's something I've always admired about you, Roger, is that you're taking action in your in your dancing career, in your business, by creating your own company and creating your own work, you've created this amazing portfolio for yourself that really a lot of people are drawn to. And I think more artists need to approach their artistic careers that way, that, don't necessarily worry about everybody else. Just focus on what you want to achieve and work towards.
Thank you for saying that. It took a while for me to get to that headspace. For so long I was auditioning and doing all these things and feeling a bit defeated or being told, oh, you're a nice guy, but don't pursue this and don't do that. And once you reach a point where you've heard all the no's you can hear and you feel like you're still being called to do something, you'll get that fed up where you're like, I'm doing it anyway. And then you fall in love with doing it anyway, So like none of us ever set out to become, I don't think most of the artists today don't set out to become entrepreneurs or start a business or a show or whatever we're working on, but we fall into it out of necessity, and then we end up loving the whole process and then helping other people to do it too. So.
Yeah, and that's a good point that you bring up too about loving the process. That's something that I always need to remind myself on too, is like to understand that the process, the day to day, is part of a bigger picture, whether it's a few years or 10 years, 20 years, or a lifetime. And so I think that's also an important thing for artists to keep in mind, is that every day is finding ways to love the process, because it could definitely be tough sometimes. And so it's just reminding ourselves that, okay, this is part of the bigger plan.
I love that. And just the fact you've been set plan, right? It's like, again, a lot of artists are just moving. We're just doing stuff and we're busy to be busy, but not many of us actually do have a game plan. So you say, well, where do you want to be in the next year, 5 years, 10 years? And it's just like a deer in headlights, because they don't know. It's like you're just trying to get that gig and survive. But yeah, how do we get to a place of planning and strategy?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah, I love it. But you've done that for sure, and you're doing it now. So
I'm trying, yeah.
You really are, and so admirable. So yeah, tell people about what you're working on, because I know you have a lot of cool projects in the works.
Yeah, well, about a year ago, I started a podcast. It's called Relate with Patrick McAndrew. It started with a different name, but a few months ago I changed it. And it's all about the importance of human relationships and meaningful connection, specifically in the age of technology, where a lot of times we can be very consumed with what's happening on our phones and on our screens. And so in this podcast, I interview a wide variety of different types of guests, whether they're from the technology field, business field, but I also interview a lot of people in the entertainment industry, just because that's where I primarily am. And I think that we as artists have a very unique perspective on when it comes to what it means to connect with people and to really dive deep into our humanity and really release our creativity upon the world. I think that artists have a very unique perspective when it comes to that. So that's a big reason why I interview a wide variety of people in the entertainment industry. Roger was on the podcast a little while ago, so for all you listeners out there, highly recommend scrolling back a bit and listening to Roger's episode. It's great. And yeah, I interviewed a wide variety of different guests, from Oscar and Tony winners to people who work behind the scenes, and it's been really great. And it's been a great way to connect with new people, to meet new people that I haven't met before, and also to network within the industry, to figure out what other people are up to, what they're doing. I think, kind of like what you're doing with these interviews, it's a great way to connect with fellow artists. And with having the opportunity to create this podcast, I'm starting to help small business owners and entrepreneurs have them start their own podcast, which has been a great way to, has been, kind of a great job as well to have in conjunction with my acting career. So the podcasting space has been great. It's something that I've been a part of for about a year and a half now. And it's a powerful tool for connecting people together and to really dive into deeper conversations, which is why I love podcasting so much. I think that social media is great. It's a great way for those initial connections. It's a great way to figure out what artists are doing. But the great thing about podcasting and about interviews like what you're doing today is that we're able to dive into a deeper conversation and really get to know artists at a deeper level, which is really cool. So that's been something that I've been putting a lot of time into right now. Now, obviously, acting-wise, as I mentioned before, things have been kind of out of hold for the time being. But I do have a couple projects in the back of my mind that I will hopefully be executing soon. So I don't want to say anything yet, but I'll definitely be sure to, keep you among everybody posted, Roger. So yeah, I mean, I think in this time of the pandemic, it's all about really pivoting and trying to figure out ways to be engaged, especially as an artist.
Well, I love it, and I'm so happy that you're doing that podcast. It's so powerful, and it's one of my favorites. Like, I listen to it often because, you're on it. You're the star of it also. That's the main reason, but also just the theme, right? I mean, you're really telling people how to live a natural life without over-relying on the screens, and I think artists, we need to learn how to do that better, all of us, because we get so consumed by tech and just feeling like our careers have to be focused on that, and they don't.
Right.
You have to use tech for what it's meant for, which is initial connection, like Patrick said, but it doesn't replace human connection. So I think it's really important for artists to listen, and hope that you guys do get a chance to hear it because it's such an amazing podcast.
Thanks, Roger. Thanks for the plug.
Well, of course. And speaking of plug, tell people how they can get in touch with you.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So probably the best way is to visit my website, which is www.patrick-mcandrew.com. So on there, you can find all of my work. You can contact me through the website as well. So if you're interested in learning more about me and what I do, just head there and you can check it out. I'm also on Instagram too, patrick.mcandrew, at patrick.mcandrew. I've only really have entered the Instagram game recently, so there's not too much on there, but I'm hoping to build it up a little bit more than what it is currently.
Oh, well, you got to help them do it. Show them some love when you go follow.
Yes.
I
know, and you can also follow the Relate podcast on Instagram at Relate Podcast.
I love that. Wow, so Patrick, just in closing, right? Go back in time for a moment, if you will, and what's the advice that you would give yourself or any other young artist who's really serious about pursuing this thing full time, and maybe they've gotten some negative feedback from loved ones and well-intended folks who are saying, "Don't do it. Become a doctor, lawyer, just don't be an artist." What would you say to that person?
Yeah, I think that I actually interviewed an actress on my podcast recently. Her name's Emily Swallow, and she had an answer to one of my questions that is similar to this, and I might steal it from her. She said something along the lines of that it's important to know what you want to do. And so what I would tell young artists is that if you want to pursue this, to definitely know it's what you want. I think that, kind of as I mentioned earlier in our conversation, for me personally, I feel like I knew I wanted to act, but I was also experimenting in a lot of other different arenas and fields as well, which I think is important. I think that's part of the process. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But I think it's important to know what you want and to not be afraid to pursue it as well, especially when you're young, when you have time on your side, that you can go out there and just go full force in your artistic form. I think that it could be very difficult when people are pressuring you not to do a specific art. I think that I was very fortunate in that I had family and friends who were all very supportive of me deciding an artistic path. But for those who might not have that, I think it's really important to consider what's going to make you happy in the long run. And if you know that an artistic career is what you want, then do it and know what you want and go for it. because if you don't, then 30, 40, 50 years down the road, you will really regret it. And you don't want to be in that position. And that's not to say, too, that if you pursue this art, you go full force, and then you decide that it's not really for you, you can go on a different path. You can pursue a different path. But at least that way you fulfilled that dream to an extent that you wanted. And then you just discovered that you wanted something else. You wanted a new dream. So I think no matter what, though, you should definitely do it. And also create your own work. I think that a lot of times young artists especially get in this trap of not doing something because they don't know how. And there's so many resources out there online. I know we were talking about how artists shouldn't spend as much time online, but to go with what you were saying before, Roger, I think that using the online space as a tool is very beneficial. And so using the internet to learn how to do things, learn how to create your own work. If you're a dancer or if you're an actor, filming things that you're doing, maybe it is creating a podcast or some sort of show of some kind, maybe doing artist interviews like Roger's doing. I think that creating a project of your own and then seeing it through is not only going to give you a lot of personal satisfaction, but it's also going to be something that you could add to your portfolio that will always be there in the years to come. I think that humans by nature are lazy. So I think it's just overcoming that hump of laziness to just do the work, and you'll be so much happier because of it. So yeah, a long story short, I would say to know what you want to do and do it, and to create your own work.
There's nothing like it. It's such a therapeutic process, and you've done it and I've done it. And we know it feels so good to be able to just let your own artistic voice develop, because that's what happens as you create the work. You get a stronger, clearer image of who you are as an artist and what you want to say and how you want to your audience. So, but that only happens when you create your own. It can't happen when you're constantly taking direction from a director, or choreographer, producer. And it's important to do those things too, but if that's all that you're doing, you're never going to find out what's your voice. You're only going to be amplifying somebody else's.
Yes, yeah, well said, well said. It's so true.
This is amazing, man. I'm just so proud of you. Like, cause this is just the beginning of your journey. I feel like you just have so much more, and just honored to have you here and for you to be able to share what you do. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much, Roger. Appreciate it. I was honored to be here.